So hello, thank you for coming. Nice to see you all here. We are the Discourse, and we're here to talk to you about what we do, and I hope slightly to inspire you to do the same, or at least to check out some of our work, and maybe also to involve you a little bit in one of our episodes. Okay, so... Oh, do we have audio even? We have a video. Okay, let's start with this. This is an example. This is the Discourse. Take it away. Thank you.
The Society of Conscious Thought has convened an inquest into the Kyanoki crisis in the isolated Postovin system in Solitude, aboard the H4RP4 Keepstar. Delegations from the four empires and independent capsuleers are already arriving at the facility, which opens formally in a few days' time. Deployment of advanced medical equipment, intelligence personnel and other assets indicate a significant effort by the empires to address the ongoing crisis, despite rising tensions across the cluster. The quarantine city of Murska, once home to 36 million citizens of the state, has been the epicenter of these rising tensions. After a sensational report by the Scope appeared to show devastation and even violence in the city, there were angry recriminations by Federation senators, which forced the Galente administration to cancel bilateral talks with the Kaldari state. When unconfirmed leaks from the Federal Intelligence Office suggested that federal operatives were active illegally within the state, the Chief Executive Panel announced partial closure of the Galente border. Under uncertain circumstances, a Quay freighter convoy then attempted to cross the border and was destroyed by state forces, further escalating the diplomatic dispute.
The propaganda war has grown vicious, with some capsuleers joining Galente media in criticising the state's handling of the crisis. However, reports shared by civilians within Mirska suggest that even the citizens trapped there understand and support the need for quarantine. This message from a Home Guard officer stationed within the city was passed to the Discourse earlier today.
It's been hard. We knew it was going to be bad, but we trained for quarantines. It's just, we never expected it to be like this. Standard procedure says you isolate the city, biotechs airdrop in, and it's over in a month. This, we're still doing our jobs, but it's all pretty ad hoc now. Our vacuum-rated gear works, we're pretty sure, but a single failure, a seal breaches, we might lose a platoon, if we're lucky. We're holding together, but we're not heroes. It's not even for the state anymore. It's for the citizens. We're just doing our duty.
Recent polling by Ngogigov shows widespread public support for the need to impose strict quarantine for a disease as contagious and deadly as Kyanoki. The cause of these outbreaks remains unknown, though experts agree the disease has been spread deliberately. Galente nationalists have pointed the finger at the state, but responsible observers, including even the Federal Intelligence Office, believe the Kyanoki outbreak to have been caused by an unknown party operating independently of state or federal institutions. Meanwhile, the situation aboard Astral Mining's RP4 platform remains unclear, with no official information on the survival rate of federal civilians. The Society of Conscious Thought is expected to mount expeditions to the platform in the coming days to verify the situation on board and secure fresh samples of the Kyanoki pathogen for study in specially built facilities on the H4RP4 Keepstar.
With the situation in the quarantine zones growing increasingly dire, the search for a vaccine or a cure has grown into one of the largest and most urgent scientific endeavours in recent history. Scientists, doctors and bioweapons experts from across the cluster are already arriving in Postovin under tight security. One delegate told us this.
Kyanoki plague has been an unresolved mystery for the state for decades. It is extremely dangerous, as we have already seen. It only takes one person to infect a city with a population of 36 million people. The inquest is a golden opportunity for us to exchange knowledge and work out a solution to the crisis. My colleagues and I are looking forward to work with the brightest minds of our cluster.
All eyes now turn to the H4 TAC-RP4 Keepstar. As scientists race for a cure and investigators search for evidence that might suggest a culprit, Capsuleer delegates will play a vital role in deciding how best to combat the disease, with the fates of millions or perhaps billions in their hands. The Discourse will be reporting live from the inquest and posting updates on Galnet at Arataka Research. This is Elinori Roden
and Cerulean Voth
in Postovin, reporting for the Discourse.
There it is. That's us. So, here we are. I'm Cerulean Voth. Nice to meet you. And here we have...
Makoto Priano.
Speak to the microphone.
Oh, let's do this professionally, shall we? It's not our strong point. Hello, I'm Makoto Priano.
I am Elinori Roden.
And I am Jared Victorian.
So, together, along with some of our friends, we produce videos like these roughly every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's about right, yeah.
Nearly twice a month, where we've kept a pretty good rhythm going. So far, we've had a good pace of output. Now, that's us. That's our characters. Makoto obviously doesn't look exactly like this.
Yeah, not really the part, but occasionally I can fake it with some good heels. Not effectively, I say, but I didn't bring my espadrilles with me. All right, let's carry on.
Sounds like we planned out the weekend. Okay, obviously we're not the only people involved in the Discourse. Maybe some of you recognize the Home Guard officer there? Is he here? No? Well, so Zendane was the Home Guard officer in the video there, and our friend Haruska, he's not here, is he?
No.
No, he's not here today, but Haruska is an Eve player who dived in to volunteer for that.
It's worth noting that our guest voice actors, we use a lot of them because we try to involve at least 3 voices in each episode. So if anyone's interested, of course, we always love volunteers, especially people with experience or interesting voices. But let's carry on with the show.
So obviously we have different jobs. Ellie and I, as you heard, do the voices, and Makoto does most of the writing for the scripts and the tickers that you see and puts the ideas together, and Jarrett does most of the hard work. That's the...
pointy-haired boss here.
The videos and stuff. And in fact, originally this was all Jarrett's baby, wasn't it? So the idea of not just having Eve Media, that's existed for years, since the beginning, I think, but the idea of having New Eden Media is a little bit different. Not very many capsuleers do this, because it's a little bit more work and a little bit more thought putting into how to put it together and how to make it work. It was done, the earliest example I know of is Tech 4 News. Anyone remember Tech 4? Yeah?
Ah.
Woo! Great production, and I think they produced about 3, 4, 5 episodes, and then the person in charge of running it was just doing too damn much work and burned out and had to quit. I think that's right. And then there was a long hiatus. As far as I'm aware, the next example was the Nova Newscast, which Ellie and I put together as an audio production.
There's a reason why I poached them.
And that, again, same problem. It was just the 2 of us. It was really too much work. And we just didn't have the time to keep it going as a regular thing. Then, a year later, along comes Jarrett, and when Ellie joins Arataka Research Consortium, the first thing he says is, "Oh my God, I love the Nova Newscast. We should do this." So then they started up. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to put in, because that was somewhat slightly intimidating. I joined a new corporation, I'm really excited, and after 2 days I get an Eve mail saying, "Hey, do you want to be on this project? It's kind of similar to a thing you've done before, it's really good fun, and I think you'd be really good for it." I've been in this corp less than 48 hours, sure, why not? Deep end, here I come, let's go.
Yeah, well, you know, if you're going to dive, you want to dive into the deep end, not the shallow end. I mean, that just doesn't work.
Hurts.
And I think what's made this work now is partly that Jarrett is a machine. And,
confirmed.
I say that as a compliment. But also because we have a much bigger team. We have a good group of people. We have clear roles, so we know what we have to do. And as a consequence, there's much less problem of burnout. I don't know how you feel about that, Jarrett?
I think our current pace of bi-weekly episodes is just fine, because sometimes it feels like so much work, and we want to keep it as a hobby and not to make it a second job. So we keep bi-weekly schedule, and yeah, it works.
Yeah, so it's become manageable, and so we really hope and expect that we can keep this going for a much longer time and become part of the EVE media landscape in the long term.
Which we'll touch on later.
So briefly in today's presentation, Makoto is going to talk a bit about the idea of the discourse and how he puts ideas together, and of course the writing of the scripts, and how to make the whole experience immersive. Or as someone on YouTube said, we want to make it feel like you're in New Eden. We want to make you experience what it's like to be a citizen of New Eden and be listening to New Eden media like the Discourse. Then Ellie is going to talk a bit about the voice acting and the equipment we use, and then Jarrett, of course, will talk about the video and design, the production that he does, and then finally we're going to try and do some live recording of you that we can use in our next episode. Okay, so Makoto.
Well, so the obvious question at first. Oh, I suppose I could be all manners of professional. Okay, so well then, in which case, let's dive in. So the question, of course, like, what is the Discourse? Well, okay, obviously it's a news program, and this is informed by a variety of choices that we wanted to make with regard to the project, and we'll go through these. But the question, of course, is what else could one do? I mean, short-form journalism is sort of obvious because it's punchy, it deals with current events, so you sort of are fed the stories by what's happening in EVE, but you know, you could also do things like sermons, you could do scientific reports, you could do long-form journalism, which is more like, you know, the 60 minutes lengthy feature story format. You could do reporting on sports events or anything of that sort. So there are a lot of options for people that want to produce media for EVE, especially if they want to do it in-game. Because essentially anything that exists in the real world, there is going to be an EVE equivalent, which is something that you can then play with. Of course, there are a few questions that you should answer if you want to properly position yourself. And of course, the first one is, well, what are you comfortable writing? I mean, do you want the sort of creative straitjacket of current events? Do you want to explore, you know, the cultures of New Eden? There are any number of questions that are just targeting that. And of course, then there's a more production side question of how much time do you really want to spend generating these programs? With us, we have a tempo that works very well because we have a division of labor, but the amount of production overhead, especially for a longer program, can increase markedly. So in that sort of case, if you want to keep it as lighter on the hobby side, perhaps you do something that requires a little bit less overhead. So, you know, fewer overlays, less graphical work, maybe coordinating fewer people on the team. These are all various choices that you can make that will affect the product that you produce. And ultimately, as has been touched on before, if you really want to become part of the landscape of New Eden media, there's the question of how often do you want to release? Do you just want to have like one really awesome project to shove out there, or do you want to keep releasing every week, every 2 weeks, every month? And of course, then you have to judge how much time you're going to be devoting over that period, because it's very common for people to start an amazing project and then to burn out, which is extremely unfortunate for all of us as viewers of all the wonderful work that people have done. And of course, then there's a question, like if you start out, if you make choices on the production end, what quality will you be able to maintain? So for instance, you might select a tempo, have an idea of your production targets, and then have degrading quality. So that's sort of the other side of the tempo question. So as we obviously believe, the development of a brand and recognition is obviously a wonderful thing. So for us, the tempo question was a very major one, and so we are constantly going back and forth about the length of programs and that type of thing. Of course, one of the important pillars of this is what you're actually scripting. And of course, because our projects involve a lot of voice acting, obviously we have to have a lot of things for people to say. The easiest to discuss are, of course, the tickers, the little things that run across the bottom. And I'll talk about the stock ticker in a little bit, but the text ticker, what's fun about that is that it's tiny, it's punchy, it suggests a story instead of telling it. And because of that, you can be a lot more creative with the ticker than you can necessarily even be with the program itself. So honestly, the tickers are my favorite part of it. But of course, there are two other major components, which is, say, the commentator scripts, and of course, the scripting that we do for various guests, who often, but not always, we actually approach with a script so that we can craft a narrative together. So I've already talked about the punchiness and the suggestiveness of the ticker. When it comes to matter of commentator and guest scripts, though, there are questions, and again, the word tempo pops up. And of course, in this case, it's less about release, it's more about who the person is and how they would speak. So this example, actually, it runs through all of it, is let's say you have a Marine on one hand or an astrophysicist on the other. You might get shorter, sharper statements, clearer discussions of, or a clear hitting of certain points. One of them might be more able than the other to discuss assaulting a barracks, for instance. And in that, when it comes to wording, to verbiage, there's also a question of what terms they would use. You would get less technical language, perhaps, less equivocation. So you end up with a little bit of the like, oh, lengthy clauses chained together, and oh, it's a paragraph that's a single sentence, and they would kill me for that. But it is, of course, relevant. But in the context of this, we do have to consider that New Eden is a science fiction universe. So, for instance, a Marine will have a perfectly fine working knowledge of plasma weapons. So, compared to an astrophysicist, they might actually be perfectly conversant for purposes of our episode. It's just working out the balance between these things and how exactly it influences who you're writing for, what you're writing for, and how, of course, that plays into your concept. And all of this, of course, then builds into this idea of creating an immersive and engaging world for the viewers. And, of course, there are some elements of personal bias in this. The most important thing for me is that you need to remain within the world of New Eden. It's one thing, it's really fun, for instance, to bring in Star Trek references or the Borg wholesale, but aside from Sancha, they don't really have a place. So well, I mean, you know, it's debatable. But insofar as it goes for staying within the world of New Eden and immersing people in it, it's helpful to know, at the very least, the general courses of CCP's lore for the world and to operate within it. And I'll just mention offhand that if at any point you're curious about this sort of thing, there are a lot of resources for people that want to learn about the world to make sure that they don't, you know, mistakenly make a faux pas and such. Like Mark 726's Lore Survival Guide, the Tweet Fleet Slack Lore channel, etc. There are a lot of us out here who can discuss this for hours. So do hit us up. And that said, while it's important to stay within the confines of the world, New Eden is a vast place. There's a portion of a regular writing contest, 1,000 Suns, I believe. And it's important to note that while we know a lot about Luminaire and Caldari Prime and certain important stations, like there's a whole chronicle about Jita 44, you know, we have no idea about, you know, a random moon in the Lursauten system or stuff like that. And that can be explored by players in a way that's a lot more engaging because it's part of the world, it's contained within the world, but it's something that you have a lot more freedom to play in, and so you can be a lot more creative. Of course, you still have to maintain the tone, and you have to understand that if you narrow your scope too much, you're going to lose interest. And so you elaborate, but you can't become microscopic in your view without necessarily risking that you'll lose touchstones for players. And this is, of course, more on the engagement end than the immersion end. If you're going to get viewers, if you're going to draw them in and make them appreciate the world you're trying to represent, in the first place, it needs to be recognizable to them. It needs to be something that they see and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's a redneck. Or something completely random like that. You know, it's just, you have to provide touchstones in such a way that it relates to their experience. Because if it's too alien, if it's made to be too sci-fi, then they stop caring. And of course, ultimately, all of this, at least in the context of what you want to write and what you want to create, it's also important to understand what really gets to the people who are watching. So one of our well, not necessarily our favorite, but one of our viewers' favorite episodes was one about the Southern War and about, various attacks by nullsec powers. And it was framed in, the view from New Eden. But it was extremely popular because it was a thing that so many people really enjoyed because, it's PvP. It's what gets them to play the game. So there's also sort of a balancing that we have to do in exploring the world, and also then ensuring that we are touching on topics that really motivate people to engage with our product. And I should mention, as you see up there, that at the end, once we get to the live portion, I think we are going to be doing a ticker shout out. So if you have suggestions, we'll be calling for it. Ellie, I believe it's your turn. Quite so.
So I am an audio person through and through, basically. So my main thing on this is obviously doing a voice. Slightly scary seeing your face on YouTube quite so often. I will tell you that for nothing. And also hearing your voice all the time kind of gets weird. So for the sound that we need for the discourse, we obviously need a variety of different things. We need voices, we need background music, and sometimes we use sound effects. I think in the one that we showed at the beginning, there was some sirens in the background. So obviously, big things going on, big destructive things going on. So
meows.
What?
The meows during the Carolyn Grace episode.
I was going to get to that. That's later, Makoto. That's later. Getting ahead of me. But yeah, so there are three core components to what we do. As Makoto touched on before, we need presenters and guests. We have background music and sound effects. But how do you get them, and how do you make the most out of them? Makoto's already touched on how you make the most out of them, to make them engaging, to make them relevant, and to make them just feel right for the character. That's the important thing as well. You can have someone with a really, really great voice, but if they don't quite match the character, then the audience is going to know, and they're going to go, okay, maybe not. So, voice and the actors. Guess what? You need a microphone. And that's pretty much it. A microphone and a way to record it. So you can use any kind of microphone. When I first started doing it about 14 years ago, I had a really crappy little Logitech mic on a stick thing, and I was using Windows default recorder. And that was fine. But now there's a lot more tools and a lot more things you can do to actually make it a lot easier, a lot clearer, a lot crisper, and generally just a lot better. So a microphone is good. The one we have on the table is actually a Blue Yeti, which is my favorite one as well. It's a USB microphone, so you don't need these big preamps that people show you about and things. Very, very nice, guys, very nice. Good job. But it also demonstrates another important thing that people sometimes don't know about or sometimes don't use correctly, and that is a pop shield, which is this big circular thing in front of it. Now, they're pretty cheap anyway, and you'd be amazed at the amount of difference that they make to a recording. Plosives, if people don't know what they are those horrible little B, P, and S.
Could you demonstrate?
Yeah, go on then.
You can hear the booms.
Yeah, that's really not nice, and it's an absolute pain to edit as well. So a pop shield kind of softens the blow between that, and much like I did with my really ghetto little microphone on a stick setup, my first pop shield was actually a pair of stockings over a wire coat hanger.
You see, sounds much better.
Yeah, and as that lovely photo of Cerulean is demonstrating, you can use pretty much anything to kind of just put something, a barrier between yourself and the microphone. Why you're using a pair of Speedos, I'm not entirely sure.
It's what I had at the time.
If you have Speedos to hand, I'm slightly worried. But there we go. Anything like that, anything, literally anything, a T-shirt, a towel, anything, it works.
You can't see what I'm wearing underneath the desk. No, and that one.
Anyway.
You still can't see what I'm wearing under my trousers.
Why do I work with you guys again?
A little bit of comfort with yourself is helpful for all of this.
Voice acting isn't, voice acting not all that easy. It is and it isn't. A lot of people, I run my own voice acting stuff as well, and a lot of people go, I'd love to, but I'm too scared. Why? You're just talking into a microphone. You're usually talking into a microphone in a room with no one else in it. Who's going to judge? Yeah, okay, don't worry about the however many hundreds of thousands of people might listen to it afterwards. That's afterwards. For the there and then of recording it, just do it, just talk to it. Or if you really, really
not comfortable about it, get someone else on voice comms and just say, hey, can you just read lines with me? You say a line first and I'll read it, and I'll read my line afterwards. So a kind of a lead-in can sometimes help as well. But just being comfortable makes a whole lot of difference to the quality of recording as well. So vocal effects and sound effects. This is where the kitten comes in. Was it the episode just before Christmas with the, yeah, it was the gala, episode 3, I think, where there was a big gala and we had Caroline Grace, wasn't it? As saying about it was a benefit for cats and kittens. And the fun story about this one is I was looking through my sound effects library for crowd sounds, which I'm hoping you guys might be good for later, and found crowd sounds. I was just going through and I was to go, oh, I wonder if I've got any cat sound effects. And I did. I had a 10-week-old kitten meowing sound effect. So I jokingly sent it to Jarrett and said, hey, listen to what I've just found. And unbeknownst to me, he put it in the episode. And it was so cleverly and subtly done that I listened to the episode, didn't even realize until about 2 days later, someone said, that was really cool, that little cat meow. Cat meow? So I had to go back and listen to it and found it. And it was just so subtle, but it was on that right level of subtlety where it was kind of, it just blended in with the background, but it worked because it was thematic and it sounded like it was meant to be there. So that's sound effects used sparingly. It's far too easy, especially if you've got things like gunfights and firefights and angry people having an argument. It's far too easy to go massively overboard with sound effects, and then you kind of drown out your main actors, you drown out everything else that's going on. Finding sound effects, also surprisingly easy. 2 sources that we've used before are freesound.org. You literally just sign up for an account. I think you have to have an account to download things still. And there are hundreds, thousands, millions of things that other people have recorded and made available for use. Some of them require credit, most of them don't. But you can just use them. They've got big background soundscapes, single little sound effects, anything like that. Free SFX is the same and has a huge section of cheesy music. When we say cheesy, there is some really, really interesting 70s porn style music on there, which I've heard. Yeah. But getting a good volume and a balance between things, as I said before, is kind of key as well. You want the music to be there so it can be heard, otherwise what's the point of having it at all? You want your voices to be clear and you want people to be able to hear them because that's what they're there to hear. But you also want to give it a little bit of flair and flavor, which is where the sound effects come into it. So a little bit of carefulness when you're doing editing is pretty good. As for editing itself, this is how we edit things. And this is a very nice little program called Audacity, which is completely free to use and does everything that almost everything that something like Adobe Audition can do. I have been using this for 12 years. I have touched Audition once. I do all of my editing in this. And you can use it for just about everything. You can use it for queuing things up, so kind of, I think it was at the start of it, putting it in the right places. For trimming it, so kind of if you've got some clicking at the start or breathing, or you go, actually I only really need that part of that sentence now, cut it, top and tail it, job done, you've got what you needed. And listening to transitions, and obviously on here you've got multiple tracks, so obviously if you've got different characters, you have a track per character, you have a track for music, you have a track for sound effects. Easier to keep track of things, easier to move stuff around as and when you need it. And it's pretty easy to use. You can kind of pick up how to do a basic edit in about half an hour. So there's really not many barriers to doing anything to do with audio. It's a lot easier than people think, and it's a lot more fun. Have been known to kind of go, oh, I'll just do this, and 7 hours later, I should probably get some food. So it's, once you get into the groove of it and the feel of it, it is also pretty good. But that's enough about the audio stuff, because video is also a big part of the discourse, and that is where Jarrett comes in. Mm-hmm. CCP have made them available on SoundCloud. So the fact that they are publicly available suggests that you can use them, and as far as my experience goes, CCP are okay with you using them. If I tend to do it anyway, if I'm ever doing like a CCP-based project, anything to do with Eve, I will always put a line in the description if I post it somewhere saying, this is the property of. always better to be safe than sorry. If you're not sure if something requires to have like a Creative Commons license or something going on, always credit it. If you're not sure, credit it. Cover yourself, it's a lot easier way to do it. But because they're available on SoundCloud, I'm fairly sure that they're just fair use.
Yeah, it's fan sites are allowed as long as we announce ourselves a fan site, or not necessarily an official fan site, but as long as you say, we are a fan site, this is CCP, there's a little blurb you can put on your website to say, you know, property of blah, 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 trademark, and the rest of that. And then you can use CCP IP within reason as part of your production. The thing with the sound effects on SoundCloud is that there are loads of them on there, but not all of the sound effects in game are there on the SoundCloud. So there's some cool stuff, but you might find that the particular sound you want to use isn't there. You can then also try to capture it from the game. I've never actually tried to do that.
It's not as hard as you might think.
It's not as hard as you might think. But yeah. Yeah, so this kind of material, as I understand it, we can use it as long as we say, hey, look, all of these ideas, including, for heaven's sake, the fact that it's an EVE production, that also belongs to CCP, and as long as we clearly state that and we're not making money from it, there's no problem with that.
Should we carry on? We've probably going to have time for more questions afterwards, hopefully, so you can keep them to the end, that'd be really good.
So, for recording, you will need 4 pieces of software which we use. Basically, we use Bandicam, which is a paid program used in combination with Legary's lossless codec, which produces really nice recordings. You can also use Open Broadcaster software, which is perfectly fine. It is free, but we never tried it so far. Then we use a Handbrake program to transcode our videos without quality loss. So we can transcode a video which weighs 1.8 gigabytes into a 18.3 megabyte file without quality loss. It is really useful if you have a weak PC you do your stuff on. So when the file is heavy, editing becomes laggy and you will have a terrible headache editing your video. And when you have a small file, you will have easy time editing your video. So then we do most of our editing in Premiere Pro, which is also a paid program. You will want to get a subscription for it. And most of our assets are produced in GIMP, which is a free equivalent of Photoshop. So most of the lines you see in the video, like lines behind tickers, UI elements, character portraits, are all produced in GIMP, and they are basically just PNG files. Before you start designing your show, you will want, if you're a beginner, especially if you're a beginner, you will want to look for references and see what the professionals do. So, for example, the direct kind of competition is the Scope in EVE, and so basically, I went to Scope, took their idea, and said, oh, hey, it's a nice thing, we can do the same. And then I went exploring to other video games to get some clues on the style, on the ways you can convey the message to your viewer. Then you gather things up and think about it. What can I do? What can I add to this? What can I throw out of this composition to make it something different, something that it says, this is our brand. This is something we made. So you want to basically keep a consistent style. Keep it simple if you're a beginner, because that will take you less time to make a complete product. And you always need to remember that all elements need to complement each other. So music, color palette, and transitions are very important in that matter. For example, we went with blue and white color scheme because our faction, we are role players, is mainly Caldari dominated, and we wanted to resemble it. So Caldari has kind of blue scheme, and we went with that. It also resembles our faction colors, which are sometimes black, sometimes blue and white. It also clearly color codes who the good guys are. which is really useful if you want to get people on your side. And then, when we had our color palette, we said, hey, what do these colors mean? Blue color is often regarded as color of wisdom. It is also a very cold color. So, who is ARC? ARC is basically knowledge. People can come ask questions about lore side of the game, and we will also always be very happy to answer them. So, color palette and music, we chose theme from Jita, which is composition made by CCP. We think it really complements the color scheme because you can easily loop it. Second, it gives you a chill atmosphere when you listen to it. So why not? And then transitions, we usually use just easy crossfading because it kind of contributes to relaxed atmosphere. We want our viewer to sit down, relax, and just watch sometimes really long, sometimes short video without getting these snappy pieces. So we just crossfade from one shot into another. So, how do you film your things in-game? CCP's new cameras, they have 3 of them, are very useful for that. We always use tactical camera, which is basically a free camera. You can position it anywhere. And then what you do is track something flying, something static, and you film it. For example, sometimes in some of our shots, we track flying ships, so they fly really close to the camera, and you can, bless you, and you can see it coming very close to the camera and see all the details on the ship. It contributes to immersion, and sometimes we film static objects, and then we use our own ship as kind of a moving point. We attach the camera to it, track the static object, and then just fly in one direction. The ship is out of the frame, and you get a nice pan of a static object. Really easy. And you may notice that in some scenes, we have an object on one side of the frame, and another object, like character portrait, on the other side of the screen. This is also easily achievable with the camera center option in camera settings, which you can easily adjust on the fly. So your target object can be on the left side or on the right side of the screen. Don't go overboard with it. I think 40% is the maximum you can do, because otherwise it will get really distorted. So you may see on the screen the elements of the show appear one by one. All of these elements are basically, except the video, are basically simple PNG images, which I discussed earlier. So you want to treat your video as a constructor, so you can easily swap pieces, swap in, swap out, like drop another ticker line, like we did with stock tickers at the bottom of the screen with stocks. Yes. And yeah, basically it is videos, sound, and pictures just sliding around with easy transitions. We'll also want to remember that modern programs are smart enough to do things for you. You can just watch a couple of YouTube videos to know what to input in that program for it to do work. You just put transitions there, put it length in, and here you go, you have a transition. Easy. Also, as I mentioned earlier, if you're a beginner, you want to keep it simple. So it won't take you too long to produce, to assemble the product, and it usually takes around 9 hours of work, because, well, I like doing stuff manually. I am quite sure that there are ways to make it shorter, but that's just how we roll. Yes, so you keep it as a hobby. And you always want to remember that you can't really be good at everything. So we have a team, and the whole show wouldn't be possible without every team member. So you want to let your team members excel in what they do best. For example, Makoto, Cerulean, and I usually work on the script. Elinari and Cerulean do voice acting. Sometimes Makoto does it in the first episode.
I've done a bit.
Yeah. Sometimes our friends do, sometimes our even fans who wrote to us like, hey, I want to do voice acting. I record stuff for TV shows. How can I contribute? And we produce a script, communicate, and there you go. So I think that about covers the video part. Who is going to be our... Huh?
Well, let's go live.
Let's go live.
Please, hop up. You're the most theatrical of all of us.
Cerulean.
Yes.
H1.
Yes, it's here. Well, I was going to use the Yeti.
Yeah, but I want to try something with H1.
Sure.
Experimentation.
Sorry, I have a new toy to play with. It's quite fun.
Okay.
Well then.
So, the idea now is that we like to get some background sounds of crowds at the inquest doing what crowds at the inquest do. Now, what do crowds do at inquests? What kind of sounds can crowds make at an inquest? Calling each other spies. I think that's great. I don't think we caught that this morning. Shall we have shouts of spy? I think that would be a useful background sound. Let's start with that.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
so
you might actually...
if I just go to Audacity here and set things up.
So that he can be at the recording station.
We're
So I'm
all
just gonna-
spies somewhere, we know this.
I'm just going to bring the Yeti forward.
Yeah, I'd
to
call
record
it
you all.
musical chairs, but hopefully I don't start singing.
Okay, so I think I'm going to try this just at the front of the stage. And it's on cardio, so it should pick you up and not us. Now, do you want to do that? And maybe we could perhaps set up a monitor just to check that it sounds
Our
okay.
trusty sound tech.
Okay. Right, are we ready? Nearly ready? Okay, so if you're ready to, let's have angry muttering and shouts of spy. It's down this side here. Sorry.
And this is why we don't actually do our episodes live.
Let's check this not mute. Here we are. Right. Are we rolling? Cool. Okay, we're live. So I'm going to count you down, 3, 2, 1, and then angry muttering, shouts of spy. 3, 2. That was beautiful. Okay, what else can angry crowds, well, what can crowds at inquests do apart from shout spy? Panic! What was yours?
Oh, applause.
Oh, clapping is good. Throwing stuff, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe after our presentation.
Something we can record.
Let's not do that. Panic is good, clapping is good, and perhaps also alarmed muttering. Should we get some alarmed?
Alarmed muttering.
Angry alarm. We got a hand up? Sorry? Chanting.
Chanting.
What
Someone's
kind of chant?
totally going to get some mission tokens out of that one. Yeah.
Right, so which word is it going to be? Well, or cure, let them die. That's a good one. Or
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. We could
burn
use
it to the
that.
ground. Glass them all. What do you think? Glass it? Burn it? Burn it. Okay, let's go with burn it. Okay, chanting burn it. 3. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to put my pointy-haired boss hat on for the moment and say that we should get some general crowd foley, like general chatter, some muttering. It doesn't need to be long, but...
Let's have some anxious muttering. Can you mutter to the person next to you, concerned about the alarming revelation that you've just heard? Ready for muttering? 3, 2... That's fantastic, thank you. Okay, and is that enough?
We might have a suggestion there. Let's see what it is.
Oh, sorry. Well, we could...
Okay, we are running short on time.
Yeah, we should...
Something positive, just to repeat.
Okay, all right. For
Let's have the
Eleanor's
round of applause.
sake-
I think that's a good... Can we have a round of applause with hear and cheering and approval?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can have applause and approving sounds. Ready to approve? We go. 3, 2. Cool, thank you. Okay.
All right, all right.
Right. What's next?
Probably better than the actual applause we'll get. So we should probably...
Tickers.
Yeah, let's do some tickers. So perhaps we could have you step down to collect them so I can hear them properly. Okay, so, hey, a convenient notepad. Wonderful. So, does anyone happen to have an idea or 5 for brief stories for the scrolling text at the bottom of an episode about the okay. We've got some enthusiasm. I believe that's...
Villa Records is offering rewards for anybody who can point at the people who are defaming our lines later.
So GMVA offering rewards for defacement?
Defaming.
For the perpetrator?
Yeah.
What was the defacement?
The defamation.
Defamation.
I'll help you spell it later, Makoto.
Excellent. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, we got one over here.
Okay, good, got it.
According to sources, the Royal Canadian Navy Reserve is upping its level of readiness. The Royal Canadian Navy press office refuses to comment. I'm not using to talking in public.
There is. Okay.
So the Carned Navy is in a poor state of readiness and they refuse to comment. The reserve is in a poor state of readiness.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay, we've got more hands.
Got that one, and then we have some presents from up front. So let's get a couple there. Oh no, it's going to be drifters, isn't it?
I can't say this without laughing now. Drifter cultist gains followers.
Do I have to write that one down?
Yeah, you should write that one down. And then we can include a question
Congratulations.
as to whether or not there's more lightning. It'll be good.
Pandemic Legion conducts hostile occupation of Galente Pleasure Hub at Inquest.
That one's a good one. That one's a good one.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, how hostile is it? Because everyone seems to be having a good time still, so... Yeah, there is that whole pandemic thing. Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Okay, we got one over here.
The Inner Beard Society criticizes the lack of Sisters of Eve presence despite their renown for being the New Eden's foremost civil aid organization.
Okay, yeah, we got it. Yeah, the sisters haven't exactly participated in this at all. Sort of curious. We do love our tinfoil. Of course, I think we... oh, well, okay, one more.
Thank you. The Kaldari state has accused the Black Eagles of being behind not only the attacks on the scientists last night, but in the infiltration of the Caldari Navy.
So we have interesting information about that. So there was a blood sample recovered from the attack that is that of patient 7, who is also Akira Casares, who is the only known party to have been cured of the Kiyonoke pathogen. So, behold, there is your relatively breaking news for our episode. That's something that came up a little bit ago. As to Fio, I don't think we really know decisively, and I won't, impugn our federal colleagues with regard to... But actually, perhaps we should progress to Q&A. Yeah. I mean, we've only got a couple minutes more, but if we've got a question or two, we certainly would like to field them.
For the video editing, what kind of specs are you using? Like how powerful is your computer that you're doing that with?
All I can remember right now is GTX 780, 6 gigabytes, and it's, if I remember correct, i5, the processor unit, but I don't remember which model. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Okay. You can always message me in Eve. I am Jared Victorian, and if you message me, I'll give you my specs.
Okay. Yeah, I think the principal question is just how long it takes to render once you're pushing it, and that just ends up taking longer if your computer is a bit weaker or older. So far as we found, we actually did prepare an episode just before Fanfest on that tablet in the middle, and it's a fairly beefy modern tablet, but something of that form can still work perfectly well for media of this type. So
yeah, it took us about 40 minutes, which is why I mentioned transcoding files. When they are not huge in size, it will take much less time to render the episode.
All right, so it seems that we are actually running towards the end of our time, so rather than keep everyone here and delay the next presentation, I think we'll be outside, and of course, we'll also be stopping by and passing by the architects down the way, so you're absolutely all welcome to come harass us, ask us more questions if you have other suggestions for tickers. Of course, if you're also participating in the inquest, I can't help but invite you to collaborate with us. I mean, it's a thing.
Thanks very much for coming.